I'll show you all the drive shafts installed. This is the one that goes from the transmission tail to the transfer case. Here's the transfer case mounted up to the cross member, as you can see. This one is from the transfer case to the rear end. From the front of the transfer case to the front axle. You can also see I installed part of the exhaust system that's going to come under the cab and clear the drive shaft just to make sure everything's going to fit. So I have the power steering pump from the donor vehicle kind of mocked up in position. It's got an angle, and this is the pitman arm. I'm working on the steering box, power steering box bracket, and I plasma cut out a piece of steel C-channel so the box can fit in here, and I'm going to drill these holes. However, I cannot bolt it from the backside to the steering box, so what I'm going to do is use these holes. I'm going to weld nuts on the inside, then I'm going to drill out where it's threaded into the steering box, and I'm going to bolt it from the other side. That way I can fit it flush up against the frame, and it'll fit real well. Here's the power steering box installed. You can see the plate that I made. It's bolted on. I've plumbed it to the pump. You can see how that works. Lots of clearance. The hood's going to come down to here, so that should clear all of that. And then this is I think it's a collapsible bearing, and so I left that shaft on, and I actually welded I put a sleeve on here and welded the another shaft to the end of it, rather than just put a whole new one in. It would look better, but it would this worked better for me. There's a universal joint going through the firewall, and on the other side I put this really cool device called Steer Clear, made from Wizard Manufacturing, and right here in Sacramento, California. And they come in different widths. This is a 10-inch width, but it allows me to offset the steering column, keep the steering column in its original spot, and offset it so that it clears the engine. So they make a brand new ball that I can stick on this pitman arm and weld. I'm push it through the backside and weld it, and then it will actually work. This I bought this from Vintage Power Wagons, and so I can stick that on the 1993 Dodge pitman arm, weld it in place, and it's going to work with my old steering linkage with some modifications. So I decided I'm going to put the transfer case shifter right on the side of this bracket that came with the American shifter. I modified so it's gonna fit on there like that, and I basically modified the existing bracket that used to go on the side of the transmission on the original Power Wagon, and I've made it line up with these two holes that were already in this plate, and that's going to go right there, and I'll just bolt it in place using a couple of cap screws like that. So I'm making a new transfer case shaft. You can see I bent this over, I just heated up with a torch, and now I'm putting it in the vise, and I'm going to tap the end using a 7/16 20 tap. I've already started that, and this is the clevis pin that's going to be used on that, threaded on the end. So I'm just going to tap this off. I tapped it off about probably 1 3/4. I put a 7/16 20 nut on there, and then I can put this clevis on the back, and it gives me a little bit of adjustment, which works out great. So I'm just going to tighten it up to about there. See how it looks. Here's the transfer case shift lever installed. Works out well. So this is the master cylinder and brake booster out of the donor vehicle. What I like about it is it's got kind of a long and narrow can, which works in the engine compartment. I've marked on the firewall a place where I'm going to be cutting. You can see the X and give me some engine clearance. I'm going to drill a hole right there, and then the 4 holes will mount it, and we'll stick it in place. I've pre-punched that and ready to go. Here's the brake booster in place. It's got a brand new master cylinder in it. It's been painted up itself. Fits in really well. Of course, it's plumbed with the vacuum lines that go to some kind of a vacuum pump. So I want to make a brass plumbing block for the brakes that I can screw to the firewall. And these blocks here don't have any place to screw to, and I don't want to just make it look messy and hanging in midair. So I'm actually going to solder it to a piece of brass plate that I've cut out. Put flux on the surface, stick it together like that, and then solder it. It just flows in like that. There's the finished brake lines mounted to the firewall, and there's also a pressure switch in there. I just made this new base that's going to go over the well where the seats are. Seats are going to attach to these pieces here. I kind of cut these out so I can access bolts and also just make it lighter. And this diamond plate steel on the bottom. This is what it looks like with the final seat base in place, all bolted down. I'm going to put the backs on and then the seats on. There's the seats. I think they look pretty good. Nice and sturdy. There's the structure underneath. There's going to be room for a battery. So right now I want to try to design the air intake system, and I'm also doing some work on the radiator hoses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these stainless steel bends that I got, and I'm going to cut this bend, and then I'm going to adjust it so I can get the air cleaner right here. I'm using one of these big K&N air cleaners that have very low restrictions and a good cleaning quality. So you can see I've fabricated radiator hoses using silicone pre-bent hoses that I got from a company called Pegasus Racing, and I use these T-style clamps that are really heavy duty, probably overkill, but I wanted to do that so it's real secure. And you can see that these hoses go together with these aluminum pieces like this, and right here I put a stainless steel pipe as an extension. I've also fabricated this air intake for the turbo, and so I used a piece of silicone tubing down there for that. I'm going to put some clamps on it, and I welded 3 pieces together, one flare, and I cut a U into 2 elbows and then TIG welded it together. Now I've got a bracket that's going to come off of the alternator bolt. So you can see the finished product there. Brackets in place, and there's the air cleaner, and it clears the hood. For the power system for the battery, built a place for it underneath the seat, put a bracket on there. You can see I've used welding cable, so heavy duty 1/0 cable, and I made the connections there. Goes underneath the cab. There's going to be a switch up here which will be all the power. It's my ignition switch and just the power on off battery kill switch. Go around to the front. There's the positive terminal, and I've had the batteries come out underneath behind the dash on the firewall using really good quality rubber grommets, which I think is super important. And now I'm going to show you how I put the ends on. So to make my connections, I use a device called this with the fabulous name Hydraulic Crimping Tool YQK70. There's a bunch of them out there, but these are inexpensive. Got it on Amazon. It has interchangeable dies for different size lugs that you're going to be putting on. And so what I found the best way to do is just to cut it with a cutoff tool. Slip that in, as simple as this, and then you just start crimping it, start pumping it. And I just go till I can't go anymore. And you release. So I'll do a little walk around and show you what I've got going. Just about ready to start it, and there's the transmission cooler up front. It's welded to the actual steel grill. There's the headlights in place. Converted those to 12 volts. You can see my plumbing for radiator hoses, the turbo, the location of the intake. Some of the wiring is starting to go in. Both hoods do close, which is important to me. There's my brake setup, power brakes, electrical cables coming down. Some of the electrical wiring still isn't done yet. There's the power steering pump. I've got the lid off because I'm still going to have to bleed that. And then here's the linkage system for the automatic transmission. Okay, I'm going to get ready to start the Power Wagon. I'll be honest with you, I've already started it a couple times just to get the fluids running. But here's my process. You flip the switch on, make sure it's in neutral. He wants to run! Woohoo! I can't tell you how great it feels to have that engine running and sounding so good and running so smooth. It wants to start every time. So it's really cool. So I'm going to put it in gear just so I can demonstrate all of the active working. So I went ahead and put it in four-wheel drive. So this little demonstration of the Power Wagon running concludes part 3 of our 3-part series. I've shown that the engine's in, the transmission's hooked up, all the driveline is in place, and it's operating. The reason it wasn't on the ground is because I don't have the brakes done yet, and so as soon as you put it into gear, you're going to have a whole lot of world of hurt. So it's up on the lift still. I know I'm not complete with it. But I'm going to do a post log. It's been fun kind of putting this thing together and trying to do it as good as I possibly can. I've enjoyed the process of not only doing it, but showing it to other people. Because I think that's the community we live in. It's car guys all sharing their thoughts, knowledge, and skills and doing things that are maybe slightly audacious, but you know, pulling it off. So thank you, and look for that post log video coming up soon. I'm not sure when, but soon. Thanks.